Welcome to the next episode of the Adventure More webinar series. I'm Alex from the 10 Adventures team, and I have the pleasure today of guiding you through this discussion that we're going to have on one of the world's most popular walking adventures, the Camino de Santiago. We have the great pleasure of having one of our past guests join us today, Denise who did the last 100 kilometers of the Camino Frances with her family last year. So thanks a lot for being here with us today, Denise.
Okay, thank you for inviting me.
It's gonna be a lot of fun. The Camino is one of those trips that everyone seems to love and everyone has their own story on. So we're really excited to hear yours and how your family enjoyed the trip. So just a little bit of an overview for the webinar. We're going to take a look at the Camino de Santiago, specifically the Camino Frances, as it's the most popular of the variants. So just going over what exactly it is, what makes Caminos popular, and some of the different variants that are out there, because there are certainly a lot if you start to do your research. And then afterwards, we're going to touch on Denise's experience as well, just because she did do a very specific portion of the Camino Frances, the last 100 kilometers from Sarria, which is one of the more popular routes. It's kind of, for a lot of travelers, it's the foot in the door, so to say, for the Camino experience. Once you start on the Camino, it seems like it's a lifelong journey for a lot of people as they kind of get bitten by the Camino bug. So it's a really special variant, and it's one we're excited to talk about. After that, we'll work through some questions that were submitted by by registrants for the webinar beforehand, and then if there are any audience questions as well, we'll touch on those. So to start, what is the Camino de Santiago? Most people that are attending this webinar right now will have at least a general knowledge of what it is. But essentially, the Camino de Santiago is a network of pilgrimage routes. So historically, pilgrims from all over Europe would travel along the Camino de Santiago. They would walk on foot from wherever their starting point was, whether it was France, England, Ireland, even for some of them, and they would walk across the countryside, take boats, whatever their method of passage might be, to end up in Santiago de Compostela, which is the supposed resting place of the Apostle St. James. So a lot of historical and religious significance for these people who are making this journey along the trail. Nowadays, that religious element is still there. However, the focus for a lot of different pilgrims has shifted, whether it's kind of a personal experience, a personal journey that they're going on. It might be more of just a travel experience to see the landscape, to experience the culture of Northwest Spain as well. So there are a lot of different reasons why people choose to go on a Camino, and they're all very deeply personal. Why are they popular? I mean, I just touched on that a little bit, but it's a different experience for everyone. When you're on the Camino, one of the things that people say is you find your own Camino. And what that entails is everyone has their own journey, everyone has their own experience. They're all the same because you're walking the same routes, but they're also very different. And I'm sure, Denise, you can attest to that, you learn about this trip beforehand. You might, watch movies, documentaries, whatever it is, and you think you have an idea about it, but it really does change you once you're there. There's something about just this little tucked away corner in Northwest Spain that isn't very well traveled to a lot of people. But once you're there, it's honestly just a magical experience. And I think that it's something that it does change a lot of travelers, and it changes their outlook on life as well. And it's also something that people really seem to want to pass on to their friends and family, and they bring this experience home with them, and you can't stop talking about it, and it kind of spreads throughout your friend group. Other people might start to do Camino. So it really is sort of like a word of mouth experience that does kind of keep growing over time. Just a few of the different routes here. I mentioned that there are a lot of them. This is just a very simple map of some of the main ones. There are actually, officially, there are 281, I think, at the current count, Caminos, which is quite incredible when you think about it. And I know that the list is always growing. I spent some time in Galicia in November, and I spoke with some people from the Camino Society, and they mentioned that they're currently trying to add Irish Caminos. They're actually trying to do a branch of Canadian Caminos. I'm not sure what that quite entails yet, but there are it's a growing list of trails that are added to this network constantly. So just looking at this map here, as I mentioned, the Camino Francés is one of the more popular routes, traveling from Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port all the way to Santiago de Compostela. That's a distance of around 800 kilometers, 500 miles roughly. So it's quite a journey. You go over the Pyrenees and then all the way across the Galician countryside as well. So that's kind of the most popular one, the most famous one that people know about. But also kind of gaining popularity right on its heels are the Camino Portugués. So both the coastal route and the regular variant, they travel through Portugal from Lisbon, or you can go from Porto as well, and then kind of heading north up into Galicia from that way. There are also a lot of shorter Caminos that you can tack onto the end. So the Finisterre to Muxia along the coast, that was something that I did when I was there in November. And it's just a beautiful kind of section of the coastline that people usually do after a Camino. They kind of tack it onto the end. So you can kind of see just from this simple map, there's so many different experiences that are possible. And like I said, once you get bit by the Camino bug, it's easy to see how you can always look for a different experience. Moving on to Denise's journey specifically, Denise, you and your family, you tackled the last 100 kilometers of the Camino Francés, and you did it in, we have an option to select some luxury accommodations as well. So doing it in a little bit more style than, say, some of the other pilgrims who, are traveling through hostels or maybe roughing it a little bit. I was just wondering if you could tell me a little bit about, your journey. You and your husband and your daughters traveled from Sarria to Santiago de Compostela. So maybe you could just tell us a little bit about that.
Yes. So, we decided to do the last 100 kilometers. We actually flew into Madrid. We took the train to Sarria, and then we went from there. And we decided to do the last 100 because we figured it was doable within the amount of time that we had for our vacation.
And that's something that we hear a lot from guests as well. The full Camino Francés, as I mentioned, is 800 kilometers. That takes a good chunk of time. I think on being on the conservative end, it's a 35 plus day trip. So for a lot of people, it's hard to get away from work or to go on a month plus long experience. So we hear that from a lot of people that this last 100 kilometers is kind of a good chunk. It's a good attainable goal to kind of get your foot in the door when it comes to the Camino. So that kind of touches a little bit on our first question, but why exactly did you choose the Camino? There's a lot of trips out there, a lot of adventure trips, a lot of walking tours around the world. What made you and your family choose to do the Camino de Santiago?
So we, like a lot of people, we had actually watched the movie The Way, which I feel like it was an inspiration to us. I know that it's been an inspiration for lots of people. And we thought that, we figured we would try to do the full Camino when we retired, which is about 7 years from now. So we still have some time before we can do the full Camino. But then through some research, we discovered that we could do the last 100 kilometers. And we were like, wait a minute, this is doable. We can bring our whole entire family and do the last 100 kilometers and still earn a Compostela at the end. And that was part of the reason that drove us there this past summer.
And I think that's something that, it really resonates with a lot of people. This is a trip that don't get me wrong, it is absolutely challenging. It is very, very difficult. There's some rugged terrain there as well. But at the same time, it is a walking tour. It's not a trek, through really, really mountainous terrain or anything. So a lot of people look at this as kind of a bucket list trip that they might do. Like you mentioned, when you retire, it's a beautiful part of Spain. There's a lot of culture, a lot of great food. The people are very hospitable. So it aligns for a lot of people with what they're looking to do for, say, a big kind of retirement goal, bucket list trip. But then, as you mentioned, it's something also that you want to experience with your daughters. And, it's at the point, I guess, when you retire, they might not be able to do a 35 plus journey. So for you to be able to organize it and do it now is a really special experience.
Yeah. They're they're seniors right now. And, we wanted to do something extra special with them before they go off to college.
Absolutely, it's a great experience to have as a family before kind of separating and going to college, going to school, and doing all that stuff for sure.
Yes.
So when it comes to your previous holidays, this is something, we often chat with, especially when it comes to Caminos, but a lot of different adventure tours as well. What was your idea of kind of a holiday, the ideal holiday prior to this trip? If you had any experience or not with trekking or walking, sorry, but when you thought of a vacation, what was it that popped into your mind?
Before last year, we did the typical all-inclusive, luxury resort vacation. You go, you book it, you fly there, and you're done. And the last couple of years, it was getting, I hate to use the word stale, but maybe like a little stale. And we just figured we need to do something different. And again, that was what, brought us to El Camino.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know. I always have this idea in my mind. All inclusives are great. Resorts are great. They're a nice time to relax and kind of disconnect and just kind of not do anything. But year after year, if you continue to do them, it becomes kind of this point where, you need something, you need a little bit of a spark, you need a different experience. And I think
Yes.
maybe that's kind of what you were describing. You sort of felt was you're going on these trips and you almost want to make them count, especially as your family continues to grow and get older. So it's something that we do hear a lot for sure. And would you say that you're hooked on active travel now, or would you still kind of sprinkle some of those all inclusives throughout?
Yeah, I mean, we're probably gonna sprinkle them, but yeah, I mean, we were actually talking about, possibly doing the same Camino or like maybe doing a different route. So it's definitely, in our future plans,
Yeah,
Definitely.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And so when it came to the actual booking process itself, if booking it all inclusive and kind of, you pay your deposit and it's all said and done was what you're used to. How did you find the booking process for an itinerary that's a little bit more intensive, like the Camino? Because, it was, a multi-day journey. There's a lot of moving parts, whether it comes to hotels and all that kind of stuff. How did you find the booking process?
Yeah, it was definitely a little bit more complicated than, just booking a resort and jumping on a flight. But I have to say, I went through your company and not that I'm like trying to like, I feel like it was so easy with your company. And, I said this before, I'll say it again. Alex, you were amazing. You became a household name. And every day we were like, let's ask Alex Taj because we just kept like coming up with all these questions. So it was definitely easy. Now, yes, I guess the most complicated part was like, just booking some of the extra hotels and which I know we could have done through you, but I think I don't know, we ended up doing it differently. And booking transportation. So that one was a little different, but retrospectively, it really wasn't that bad.
Yeah, absolutely. And I promise that question wasn't me just kind of gassing myself up and because, I did plan your
Yeah.
trip and we did kind of pull it all together for you. So I'm not trying to,
I know we must have
promote myself here.
at least 100 emails between us. So.
No, but at the end of the day, that's kind of what we're here for, especially
Yeah.
for people who say haven't done one of these longer distance experiences before. We're here to answer those questions. And,
Yes.
it's something when you don't have the knowledge, the experience doing, it really helps to have somebody who has knowledge or has a local connection just because, you're able to get those direct answers as opposed to guesswork. Because when it comes to something like this, that's kind of, for a lot of people, the scariest part is the unknown, right? And so I'm happy that we were able to kind of pull everything together for you and answer all those questions. I promise you didn't have that many. Don't worry. So when it comes to the actual logistics of the trip, did you end up booking the luggage transfers? Because I know for a lot of people, the Camino is such especially for a lot of solo travelers, they really want to do everything themselves and they want to carry all their gear. They want to do all this stuff. But, for days on end, that can become a bit of a grind. So did you end up booking the luggage transfers?
Absolutely. Yeah, we did it through 10 Adventures. It was great. I'm a girl that likes to bring a lot of clothes, and I brought all my clothes. So yeah.
And I mean, I'm probably the exact opposite. I bring as little as I possibly can on a trip. I did one backpacking experience through New Zealand where I definitely
wow.
packed too much. And ever since then, I have I pack and then I look at things and I go, I don't need that, and I repack and whatever. But
Yeah.
everyone that we speak to who does do the luggage transfer, and this even goes for some people who, in the past have never done them, the moment that they do it, they realize it's a big, I mean, figuratively and literally, it is a weight off their shoulders, because it allows you to
Yes.
really kind of be in the moment and experience, being on the trail, as opposed to worrying about carrying all your gear and your clothes and stuff. And it does provide you with a little bit of flexibility as well. So I'm glad that you were able to kind of have all the clothes, have everything that you needed to make the Camino your own. And then when it comes to doing the Camino as a family, last 100 kilometers, that's a long distance. And I think for a lot of people, especially if they weren't used to walking for days on end, it could be a bit difficult, I guess you could say. How did you and your family find walking along the Camino?
It wasn't too bad. I think, if anything, I may have been the one who was like in pain the most, but it was really like only the first 2 days, because I have a previous injury on my ankle. And of course, about like 3 months before we left, I twisted my ankle. It just had to
Of course,
happen.
of course.
So it's like kind of like an old injury, and my ankle was definitely hurting like the first 2 days. But I don't know. This sounds like really weird, but there was one moment where we stopped at a cafe. I had a can of Pepsi, which I never have. I'm not really a soda person. And would you believe that from that moment on, I was good to go? Like, there was no pain whatsoever. So I don't know. I feel like there was like a little magic involved there, because the first 2 days I was in pain, and then after that, I was fine. Yeah.
There you go. That's the key to healing all your Camino injuries, is just a can of Spanish Pepsi, I guess. I don't know what they put in there,
Can of
but
Pepsi of all things, can of soda.
it's for it being your first long distance experience. I mean, it's unfortunate that something happened shortly before. That
Yeah.
does happen to a lot of people as well. But it sounds like you were able to persevere, work your way through it. Also knowing, that at the end of the day, there also is a hotel waiting for you at the end that you can kind of relax once you get there. And that there's a support team as well. If you do need help, if you were to get seriously injured, that's kind of in the back of your mind as well, knowing there's always somebody there to help. So it sounds like you were able to make it through and persevere, no problem. And the Camino itself, I mean, walking along this trail, like I mentioned, 100 kilometers, I'll probably say that a bunch of times. 100 kilometers is a long distance, but it's known to be one of the best marked trails in the world. Especially, when you consider how many different variants there are, it's really mind-blowing seeing all the different markers and everything. How did you find navigation, walking on the trail using the app, route notes? What was your experience with all of that?
So easy. Like, everything was marked so clearly. The yellow arrows were everywhere, and it was not a problem at all. I mean, if anything, my daughters were like, "There's the arrow," like, and once in a while, like, we weren't.
Come on,
paying
Mom and Dad,
attention.
you're lagging behind, yeah.
Yeah, because we don't always pay close attention, but but it was very easy. Yeah, plenty of arrows everywhere.
So you didn't find yourself following some other pilgrims and getting lost and realizing, we got to go back a couple of kilometers?
Yeah, I mean, you get caught in a conversation, and then all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, did we miss an arrow? But it was very easy, honestly.
No, that's great to hear.
Yeah.
It's astonishing once you're there and you kind of you realize there's one of these little markers every couple hundred meters or something, and then when you see that other map, let alone that I mentioned, there's about 280 routes, different Camino routes. To think of the work that is involved and the people who are going out and kind of updating these and maintaining all of these different sign markers, it's really kind of it's astonishing to think of how much actually goes into maintaining these Camino routes. So one of the big questions, and this one is this. I loved the food in Galicia. I thought it was absolutely phenomenal. And I didn't even walk the Camino. I was just, there kind of pigging out at different places along the Camino routes. But I can assume after, a long day on the trail, you arrive at, a hotel, you go to a restaurant, whatever it may be. How did you find the food? Because for me, I was in heaven.
Yeah, same. It was excellent. The food was excellent everywhere we went. I can't complain about a single meal. I am allergic to shellfish, so if there was like a situation where I would tell the waiter or whatever, but like honestly, delicious everywhere. I miss I miss the food, honestly. It was delicious.
And that's actually, it's a great point to bring up your shellfish allergy, because
Yeah.
this is such a seafood heavy part of Spain as well. It's right along the coast. It's a big part of their culture, whether it's, the octopus, clams, all this different stuff. They really have that as a focal point. And you had no problem at all finding, a
No
great meal
problem
to
at
eat
all.
no matter where you were?
No problem. Everything was delicious.
Ah, perfect.
Breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
That's good to hear. I mean, I personally think I probably ate my body weight in octopus while I was there. I was like, I just got to dive in,
I wish
because
I
I'm
could
not
eat
going to have
that.
this.
Yeah.
It's too good.
Yeah.
So when it comes to your memories, your own kind of personal idea of the Camino, what was your favorite moment? Because it's such a long trail, and there's different things kind of spread all along it, different towns, different villages, different historical sites, all this kind of stuff. What was your favorite memory that you can
Oh
recall
my
from being
God.
on the
There's so
Camino?
many there's so many to choose from, honestly. But I mean, definitely like the top would be just arriving in Santiago de Compostela. I feel like most people are gonna say that. Like when you arrive, they have the bagpipes going, everyone's so excited, everyone's so happy. We like the day that we ended, the weather was absolutely perfect, beautiful, sunny, just perfectly warm. Like it wasn't too warm, it wasn't too hot. Like it just arriving there and seeing the cathedral. I mean, that was just amazing. And again, we're doing this as a family, so it made it extra special. But definitely arriving there.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and it's one of those things. You walk into that square, and Santiago is not a big city. It's got a really tight, small historical center, and when you walk into that square, it's the cathedral literally just towers above you, and it's such a, I don't know, like it's an imposing sight sort of, and you walk and you're kind of just like awestruck at the fact that there's this, you've reached the end of the trail. That's kind of like the ultimate end goal. There's other pilgrims around you. Everyone has this same feeling of like elation sort of, and it's just such a momentous occasion. The fact, I think, that you had nice weather is also kind of an oddity for a lot of people. Galicia sees a lot of rain, and if you don't get soaked at least once on your Camino, I don't know if you've had the experience, because it rains a lot, but it sounds like you had perfect weather.
Yeah, we had to take out the raincoats once, so we got really lucky. And it was literally on the last day. I think it rained for maybe, I don't know, not even an hour, and
Oh, that's not bad.
yeah, barely. It was nothing. And honestly, I'll never forget, like, when you're getting to the end, there's so many people. I mean, the crowd all of a sudden kind of grows. And there was this crowd of students, and they had the music going, and the rain and the music. It was like the perfect combination. So we were just like, we were partying. We were like having fun. We're like, we're almost there. So it was, we were really lucky, honestly. Was it really hot on certain days? Yes. But we don't mind it, We're like, we like the hot weather. So.
It's all part of the experience, right?
Yeah.
You're out on the trail, you're roughing it, and it's, you kind of just have to take whatever you can get, and
Yeah.
that's also part of what makes it such a special experience, is that there's certain things that are out of your control, and you just got to roll with the punches, right?
Yeah, definitely.
When it comes to advice for a first timer on the Camino, are there any things where, looking back, you could say, I wish that I would have known this prior to setting out, or prior to choosing this journey?
I mean, I feel like the only thing that I would say, well, number one, definitely bring two pairs of shoes. Because I had definitely had to change my shoes every so often. Well, in the beginning, especially when I was in pain. So I would change back and forth. Definitely bring two pairs of shoes. Bring extra socks just in case. Advice, I kind of feel like if looking back, I kind of wish that I could take in the moments a little bit more. I don't know
Yeah.
how to explain it. Like, I mean, we were there, we had an amazing time, but sometimes, like, I feel like I didn't, like, let it soak in enough. And again, I'm not sure how to explain that correctly, but yeah, that was
It's
it. Like, we have
it's
to
tough
live more
because
in the
there's a
moment.
lot. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a lot going on. It's the busiest stretch of that trail, right? That last 100 kilometers, because people see it as such an accessible and attainable, part of the journey. It's packed with a lot of people. So I
Yeah,
can
so
see
we,
how you could.
yeah, I was gonna say, I know that it's busy, but we actually would leave late. And
Oh,
it
that's
wasn't
that's a
that
smart
busy.
move.
Yes, so we were leaving maybe like 10, 11 o'clock, and lots of times we were alone on the road.
That's a
Yep.
smart way to do it because all I've heard from a lot of people, especially that last portion, is it's everyone go 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 at the same time. Everyone kind of crawls out of their hotels, their
Yeah.
hostels, and kind of hits the trail, and it's almost like running a marathon. So it's smart that you found a really good way to kind of work around that.
Yeah, yeah. It was great. I'm telling you, there were times where we were completely alone. And again, it's because we left later.
Yeah, and that probably adds the experience as well. Kind of gives you kind of those moments to reflect on the experience as a whole without kind of
Yeah.
the hustle and bustle of everyone
Yes.
around, right? And we kind of touched on this a little bit earlier in the webinar, but do you have any future Camino plans? A lot of people get bit by the bug, once they do it once. I know you mentioned this was something that you kind of had set in your sights for retirement, and then you kind of jumped ahead and did this a little bit early. Are you still thinking, I'm going to do the full Camino? You mentioned maybe doing a different route possibly. Are there any that you have in the back of your mind that you might like to try?
Yes, definitely both. So we would like to do the full Camino. Again, hopefully when we retire. So that would be in about 7 to 8 years. We were looking at possibly doing the Portuguese route. I don't know if we're going to be able to do it hopefully within the next, I would say like 4 to 5 years. Only because, again, my daughters are leaving to college this August. So we're not sure we're gonna really be able to fit it in. But definitely at least one more. One more. I have to do it at least one more time.
Absolutely, yeah. It's there's something about that area that just kind of calls you back, and I already had the before I even left. I think I had my sights on that I want to do the full Camino. It's tough, like you mentioned, being able to carve out that time and set it aside, and then as things kind of change, it's you have to reevaluate. But maybe I'll kind of take your approach, and instead of planning to do the full Camino Frances, I'll carve out that little last 100 kilometers. I'll do that first, and then maybe come back and get to it. I think that was actually the last question, Denise. We're just speeding through these.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh no, that's not in a bad way. It's all right.
Okay.
We're just making great time. So in terms of audience questions, I know that there was one pre-submitted question, and it has to do with the luggage transfers. And Bridget asked if it's possible to send your luggage ahead. So maybe this isn't really a question for you because you're not really a logistics operator, but is it possible to send your luggage ahead to Santiago and then kind of catch up with it? I would imagine you can, but that's kind of the beauty of doing a luggage transfer is that you can have your luggage with you at every stage of the route. And maybe you can speak a little bit more to this because you mentioned you like to have a lot of clothes and stuff. Did you ever find that throughout the entire process were there any delays with luggage transfer? Was it fairly reliable, like something where when people go on a plane and they're like, oh, I don't want to lose my luggage, I'm not going to check a bag. Was there any fear like that for you?
I always have that fear, but it was great. I mean, we didn't have any problems at all with the luggage. It was always there when we arrived, easy to find, easy to I think we had to put a little luggage tag on it. Very easy process. The only part that was maybe a little tricky was we had to bring it down by a certain time, so that the people who transport it would get it. So sometimes we had to do like a little pre-planning, make sure we have our toothbrush, toothpaste out so that we can get that done, and you know what I mean, before we leave. Especially since we were leaving a little bit later. But honestly, it was very easy overall. Oh, very easy.
Yeah, and I guess that wouldn't really line up with your plan of wanting to leave late either, right? It's kind of like you have this grand scheme. You're going to get out after everyone else, have the trail to yourselves, and then you have to get up early. It kind of, I don't know, it almost throws a wrench right in that whole plan.
It was fine. It was fine, honestly. It's 3 girls, so we need that extra time to get ready.
Well, I'm glad you're able to have it for sure.
Yeah.
Let's see if we have any audience submitted questions here. Laura asks, my mom only speaks French, no English or Spanish, and wants to do the Primitivo route. Do you think she'll be okay with the signage and getting around? I know you didn't do the Primitivo route, Denise, but when it comes to the Camino signage, are there any... is there any text you need to read? I already know the answer to this, but is there anything that you really need to, understand language-wise when it comes to those?
Well, no, not really. I mean, well, we do speak Spanish, you know.
Okay.
So we were able to communicate with everyone. But I know, like, there were times, like, sometimes I would speak to them in English. They would answer me in English. Like, I mean, it really wasn't, I didn't see it as a problem or a barrier or anything like that. So I feel
Absolutely.
like anyone would be fine with that, you know.
Yeah, and I think if you were planning on doing the entire Camino Frances, those earlier portions, people are absolutely going to speak French, just because it does start in France, it crosses over
Oh,
the
yes.
border, and there is some kind of language overflow there. The other thing to consider is that the Camino signs themselves are just giant arrows, more or less. I can't really recall ever seeing one that had any text accompanying with it, other than if it was one of the Camino columns, it would point to the end point. It would say the end point of the route. So for myself, we did sections of the trail walking from Finisterre to Muxia, and every time it would just say Muxia and the arrow with the amount of kilometers that were left to go. So there's nothing really language wise in terms of a barrier. I think that would stop you from being able to walk
I
the
don't
trail.
think so. Yeah.
JS says, thank you for sharing your expertise. No problem. I don't hope you don't mind me asking, is it important to book dinners with the tour, or are there many dining options along the route? Thank you very much. How did you find it? I know that you had included in your itinerary, probably had some of the dinners. Did you find it troublesome, finding extra dinners or doing anything like that along the route?
Not at all. Well, so the lunches were not included, so that was like easy. And then you also got like that pilgrim discount, which is kind of cool. So it was like a little bit cheaper, you know. We never had problems finding food at all. If you like coffee, the coffee there is amazing. So, and there's coffee everywhere. As far as the dinners, not really. I mean, even in Santiago, there were plenty of places to eat, and like I said, every place that we went to was amazing, delicious. I think we ate at three different restaurants. I can't remember. Yes, three different restaurants, all good. And once we got to Santiago, so it was easy. I mean, you just walked around the square. There's just so many restaurants, you know.
Yeah, and
Lots
there's
of
all those little
options.
kind of winding streets going off in different directions and all those little
Yeah.
alleyways. In terms of along the route itself, I mean, you and your family did it in kind of the peak season, right? I think you were end of June into July of this past year, right? So that's right in the height of when everyone wants to walk the Camino. And
Yeah.
if you didn't have trouble finding, a restaurant or getting a table at a restaurant or whatever it is, I think, it's safe to say there are a fair amount of options.
And again, the food was, I mean, like I can't say that there was like a meal that we didn't enjoy. Everything was so good.
Yeah, it's cuisine wise. There's almost no place better. When I came back, I told my wife, I was like, it might almost be better than Italian. I don't know. It's kind of, for me, it was up there. Like, I absolutely loved everything,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's definitely, if you're a foodie, it's the place to go.
Oh
Absolutely.
yeah.
Okay, Bridget asks, how did you choose the accommodation, and did you book it ahead of time? You booked the accommodation through us. You also mentioned that you did some other extra nights in hotels, so maybe you can touch on that. But in terms of our process, we have local connections in Spain, and we're able to kind of book those accommodations along the route. During peak season, it can be a little bit tricky because sometimes those first choice hotels really do book up quickly. People want those certain dates, so that's when you start to look for alternative accommodations, especially with the luxury options. Some of those luxury hotels might be a little bit off the trail as well, just because they can be more of like a boutique kind of guest house or boutique hotel that's a little bit more of a kind of like not a resort, almost like a spa kind of vibe. So like those can be a little bit removed from the trail. But basically we have a preferred list of hotels that we like to book with, and then we kind of just work through that list depending on how the season kind of progresses. But Denise, maybe you can touch on your experience booking those extra nights along the route as well.
Sure. I mean, we booked, I think it was like 3 extra nights in Madrid and then 1 extra night in Santiago. Really easy. I mean, we tried to do our the best research that we could online, looked at reviews. Madrid is beautiful. I mean, you can't go wrong. I feel like you can't go wrong wherever you stay there. And in Santiago, we were able to stay in the Parador de los Reyes Católicos, which I think is
Which is
like
a
one of the most,
beautiful, beautiful hotel.
that was like an experience in itself. Absolutely amazing. And actually, that was part of the reason why we tried to book early because we wanted to try to get the best, accommodations. But El Parador, that was just phenomenal. And then we booked an extra night in Santiago, and the other place that we stayed at was just as beautiful. I mean, obviously it didn't have the history, but it was very beautiful. It was easy. It was easy. Yeah, just the extra research on our own, and it wasn't a big deal.
Yeah, so it's kind of like traveling anywhere. You do a
Yeah.
little bit of do some research, kind of find out what it is that you might have an idea of, and then it really comes down to timing. I don't want to say I'm surprised about the Parador, but it is a absolutely stunning hotel. For those who don't know,
Amazing.
it's located right on the main square. The front doors open up into the main square, right where the cathedral is as well. So you're kind of right in the heart of Santiago, and it is walking through that building is an incredible experience in itself. Let alone the fact that you have that cathedral and all the rest of the history right there as well. So it's
Yes,
kind of
and oh, yeah, I was gonna just say, you have to do the rooftop cathedral tour if you go. That was another amazing experience. So I definitely recommend that.
yeah. And I guess maybe that's something because we do have a little bit of extra time here. Is that what other experiences, if any, did you do once you got to Santiago? Because you spent how many days walking the trail? You arrive. I would imagine you booked a couple extra nights because you needed a little bit of rest because that is a pretty intensive activity to do. But then also once you kind of get that rest, it's like, all right, what is there to do around here? So are there any other experiences that you could maybe share that you found to be really great in Santiago?
Yes. So when we arrived, so it's funny because we had massages that we were supposed to get, and we were just so like enthralled by everything that we actually forgot to go to our massages.
Oh, not the pilgrim massage, no.
Yes, can you believe that? We actually forgot that. Of all things to forget. But anyway, we totally forgot that. But regardless, we went to get our Compostela certificate. That was so easy. I actually heard online that was difficult. I don't know,
Really?
but the process was just like so amazingly easy to get your actual Compostela certificate. So that wasn't a big deal. But we walked. I mean, there's just so much to see, so many little stores, beautiful stores that you can visit. We did the cathedral tour. And like I said, we did the rooftop tour, which was pretty amazing. So it is in Spanish. I don't know if they do it in English. That one I'm not sure about, but it's still worth it. Even if you do not understand a word that the lady's saying, it's still worth it. And then we also went to Mass. We went to the Pilgrim's Mass. And then we also went to do the, like, where you go to the church, you visit the church and you go into the catacombs. I don't know, I'm not sure if that's the right word. And then you hug the apostle. That was another amazing experience, and I definitely recommend everyone. I mean, you have to stand in line for that one, but I think it's worth it. It's really cool. It's just really cool.
I think that's kind of the nice thing too is there are all of these little kind of smaller experiences that kind of wrap up and really make it such a special trip once you do get there. You've done the entire long walk, you've done the activity itself, you get there, and then there's so many little things and little small areas of Santiago to explore. I know another thing that a lot of people do, and I think I touched on it previously, is a lot of people tack on one of the smaller caminos at the end. So walking to the coast, whether they go to Finisterre or Muxia or one of those areas, they'll tack that on because and don't get me wrong, the terrain there is quite rugged along the coast, but it is such a beautiful experience that if you have a few extra days, it's something worthwhile to do as well.
Definitely.
And in terms of some of those smaller city tours, I think what it comes down to, I think they do offer a lot of them in English. I think it might be more so having to book them they probably book up very quickly, and you might need to figure out the correct times. So I think that those are available as well.
Yes.
But it
And
sounds
we
sounds
also
like there's
found the
lots.
secret nuns. We also found the secret nuns and bought their delicious cookies, so I definitely recommend that as well.
So it all comes back to food once again. It's I don't know.
Yeah.
I didn't have any secret nun cookies when I was there, but it sounds like
Oh
something
my
that I missed
God,
out
they're
on.
so good. They're so good. They're so good.
Well, it sounds like you guys
Amazing.
had an amazing time on the trip. Had an amazing way to wrap it up as well with all these small experiences. So thanks for sharing all of that with us. That brings us to the end of the webinar. So Denise, I really, really appreciate you, being willing to jump on, kind of share your experience with us. The Camino is something that, a lot of people hold near and dear to their hearts. And it's something that a lot of people also have questions on. And to hear a story like yours, if there's anybody out there who thinks, oh, that seems far-fetched, I don't think I can walk that far, I don't think I can do whatever, you can, and there's a Camino for everybody. Like I mentioned, you just have to find yours. And I just want to say thank you again for being here to share your experience.
Thank you as well.
With that being said, thank you all for attending. I'm going to put our 10 Adventures email, my personal email as well, just down in the chat. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. If you want, I don't know if it'll be a little bit of overkill. We're also running a Camino Portuguese webinar next week on Friday on the 16th, same time, 1 o'clock Eastern. So feel free to shoot a message in there, and I'll send you the registration link for that as well if you feel like attending. But yeah, thank you very much, everyone, for attending this Camino de Santiago last 100 kilometers webinar. And I guess we'll see you on the next one.